A new U.S. stealth bomber is in the works, and the U.S. Air Force says it could be ready to see action by the mid-2020s. It's called a long-range strike bomber, and U.S. officials are touting it as the next generation of U.S. air dominance. Well, the project is classified, and the Pentagon is being very tight-lipped about its specific aircraft capabilities.
For over a century, the contest for air supremacy has shaped the fate of nations, from the wood and canvas dogfights of World War I to the high-altitude raids by the B-29 Superfortress in World War II, and on to the stealthy overflights of the B-2 Spirit above Kosovo. One principle has remained: decisive power flows to those who can deliver it more swiftly, precisely, and unpredictably than their adversaries. And each leap forward in airborne technology is inevitably met with corresponding advances in defense. Radar, missiles, and electronic warfare rose to challenge bombers, only for new tactics and innovations to answer in kind. Now, once again, the foundations of aerial conflict are being redefined. Inside the Pentagon and classified research labs, the U.S. Air Force and DARPA are laying the groundwork for a new concept in air warfare that transcends the conventional wisdom of past decades. Enter the NextRS, the code name for a U.S. program aiming to develop a hypersonic, stealthy, long-range bomber. Its goal: to exceed Mach 5 speeds, 5 times the speed of sound, and operate at the threshold where speed and invisibility converge. Unlike the gradual improvements of past generations, the NextRS project marks a potential leap. A bomber intended to slip through air defenses, deliver modern weapons faster than adversaries can respond, and return ultimate control of the skies to its operators. Platform and payloads alike, represented by armaments such as the U.S. Army's evolving Dark Eagle missiles, embody the disruptive effect of hypersonic technology: less warning time for anyone under threat, and less opportunity for defense or retaliation. If the traditional maxim has been "speed is life," then the shift toward operational hypersonics brings that notion to its extreme. But the urgency behind hypersonics is not isolated. Nations across the globe are pouring unprecedented resources into hypersonic missile and defense technology, sparking a modern arms race. Against this backdrop, the question looms: what changes when America's next bomber is not just incrementally faster, but represents a fundamental shift in how military power is projected and defended against? The answer will alter the planning and shape of future conflicts long before the first mission is flown. How will this pursuit of hypersonic performance redefine battlefields? Can adversaries keep pace as these platforms evolve from concept to combat readiness? Foundations of hypersonic ambition. Efforts like NextRS build upon decades of strategic pressure and technological ambition, shaped by the steady progression of global threats and aerospace innovation. Throughout the Cold War and beyond, successive bomber generations reached higher, flew faster, and leveraged stealth to remain viable as adversaries deployed ever more effective air defense networks. Chief among them, layered systems like Russia's S-400 and China's HQ-9, designed to deny access to contested airspace and track or intercept advanced aircraft. Each technological gain for attackers has historically led to new defenses, resulting in a perpetual contest to outpace detection and engagement technologies. Hypersonic flight, defined as exceeding Mach 5, requires rethinking nearly every aspect of aircraft design. At these speeds and altitudes, material science, propulsion, and avionics all reach their limits. Unlike the doomsday bombers of the Cold War era, conceived around nuclear deterrence, the NextRS is being developed specifically for conventional precision strike missions. Its tactical rationale is clear: move faster than a defender can respond, stay below the operating altitudes of satellites and above many ground-based radars, and reduce warning time to the briefest interval possible. This focus is rooted in hard reality. The resurgence of state-based military competition has spurred the development of increasingly sophisticated detection networks. Modern radar, signals intelligence, passive sensors, and advanced anti-air missiles are designed to overcome classic stealth techniques. The development of hybrid propulsion systems, such as jet engines that transition into ramjets or scramjets at high speeds, and deep integration with hypersonic weaponry represent concerted attempts to restore operational surprise and overwhelm air defenses. America's pursuit of a hypersonic bomber through NextRS is both response and escalation. Unlike earlier strategic bombers, NextRS is not intended solely for nuclear missions. Instead, the emphasis is on rapidly delivering non-nuclear, precision-guided hypersonic weapons, like Dark Eagle, against critical or time-sensitive targets. This enables a wider array of military options, offering credible means of escalation or response short of nuclear warfare, but with overwhelming speed and reach. The pressure to deploy such platforms comes not just from technological ambition, but from recognition that the US must maintain an edge to shape events in regions where military speed and reach are decisive. Any significant lag risks eroding operational advantages, particularly when adversaries continue to narrow technological gaps. In military scenarios where minutes, sometimes even seconds, matter, falling behind can mean strategic vulnerability. Still, the very ambitions of hypersonic technology raise complex questions. As new capabilities emerge, former assumptions about deterrence, escalation, and defense planning are being challenged. The shape of these challenges is only starting to come into focus. The rise of the hypersonic arsenal. Central to the NextRS vision is the concurrent revolution in hypersonic missiles, exemplified by the US Army's Dark Eagle. For military planners, hypersonic is no longer future speculation. It is a present-day battleground. The Dark Eagle, for instance, represents a new trajectory for land-based strike. Missiles that maneuver at hypersonic speeds and altitudes, reducing adversary response time to the absolute minimum. The capabilities of Dark Eagle and similar systems are grounded in physics and engineering. Such missiles are designed to maneuver at speeds and altitudes that evade existing defensive systems, including most kinetic interceptors and emerging directed energy weapons. Their ability to alter trajectory during flight poses major challenges for conventional air defense, which relies on the ability to predict and intercept approaching threats. By operating on the edge of space, they move within gaps in radar coverage and exploit the limitations of current tracking technologies. A fundamental advantage of hypersonic strike is the compression of the threat timeline. Where traditional missile attacks might provide minutes of warning to military and political leaders, hypersonic strikes reduce this window dramatically, sometimes to seconds, making it much harder to protect mobile or high-value targets, organize defenses, or coordinate responses. These new armaments are enabled by engineering breakthroughs, airframes and coatings that withstand intense frictional heat, sensors and avionics designed to survive high-G maneuvering, and advanced guidance systems resilient to signal degradation and jamming. Innovation in materials science, particularly ceramics and composites, underpins most of these advances. Importantly, the US is not alone. Russia and China have both tested and, in some instances, fielded hypersonic missiles. The Russian Avangard and Kinzhal systems and China's DFZF glide vehicle are early entrants in this emerging category, while nations like India and Australia are pursuing indigenous capabilities. Military analysts acknowledge this dynamic. Resources worldwide are flowing toward hypersonics at an accelerating pace. The defining edge in the coming years will be less about who can field hypersonic weapons and more about who can develop effective means of delivery and sustain long-term operational advantages. For the US, this means integrating platforms like NextRS with hypersonic weapons to achieve effects not previously possible, striking moving or hidden targets at speed, disrupting command networks, and holding new classes of enemy infrastructure at risk. But with this power comes substantial operational and strategic risk. Rapid, unpredictable attacks can destabilize traditional deterrence models, compress decision-making windows, and force new questions about escalation and control. Detection, stealth, and the vanishing bomber. Since the dawn of air warfare, the race between visibility and evasion has shaped the development of bombers. First came radar, then radar-reflective countermeasures. When stealth bombers like the B-2 appeared, new detection techniques followed. In the hypersonic era, the equations change, as the sheer speed of approach outpaces conventional methods of early warning and engagement. The NextRS concept is premised on the idea that detection, while inevitable, can be rendered moot if interception is impossible. Modern sensor networks, over-the-horizon radars, synthetic aperture satellites, and distributed low-frequency arrays are becoming ever more persistent and capable. Yet at hypersonic speeds, the time between detection and the need to respond is compressed to a point where effective engagement is impractical. A technical challenge persists. Hypersonic bombers, by virtue of their high speeds, generate pronounced heat signatures. This has led nations to invest in advanced infrared detection capabilities. However, NextRS and similar platforms aim to exploit limitations in current sensors and tracking networks, maneuvering in under-observed atmospheric layers and exploiting blind spots, where radar coverage is thin or intermittent. In practical terms, the window for adversaries to detect, track, and engage a Mach 5+ bomber may last only seconds. By the time a radar return is registered and verified, the aircraft may already be closing in on its objective or out of engagement range. This shift incentivizes near-constant adaptation in both offensive and defensive technologies. To stay ahead of evolving detection, new countermeasures are being explored. Advanced electronic warfare suites, potential adaptive camouflage, and novel applications of metamaterials to modulate radar and thermal profiles in real time. Coupled with AI-enabled route planning designed to find the lowest-risk flight corridors, these approaches aim to maintain operational surprise and invalidate traditional tracking methods. In this context, victory depends not only on raw capability, but on the ability to buy a handful of unchallenged moments on the battlefield, where technological edge translates to operational impact. Sixth-generation evolution or revolution. As hypersonic platforms approach viability, they coincide with the development of sixth-generation combat aircraft, concepts that promise advances in speed, stealth, and integrated unmanned capabilities. While sixth-gen fighters are being developed for air superiority, multi-domain operations, and advanced electronic warfare, the NextRS is singularly focused. Strategic strikes at speed, evading the densest air defenses, and surviving in environments shaped by rapidly advancing detection threats. Whereas previous bombers were designed as platforms for nuclear deterrence, NextRS is not intended solely or primarily for that mission. Instead, it aims to deliver precision-guided, non-nuclear effects deep inside contested zones, enabling missions such as disabling air defense radars, command posts, or other high-value installations. This marks a transition away from the concepts of the Cold War and toward options for limited, rapid, and proportionate military responses. The strategic significance of combining hypersonic speed with stealth and payload is noteworthy. Firing a hypersonic missile from a bomber flying at subsonic speed is one thing. Launching from a Mach 5 platform multiplies both reach and unpredictability, further reducing defender reaction time. Although these trends might appear to simply extrapolate past progress, greater speed, increased stealth, smarter onboard systems, the challenges they introduce are qualitatively different. Hypersonic strike capacity raises the risk of preemptive attacks on crucial nodes, potentially undermining established deterrence. Balancing these new tools with responsible policy and doctrine will be essential to prevent instability. The global hypersonic arms race. As these technologies mature, a new global contest has emerged. Attaining, countering, and neutralizing the power of hypersonic arms is becoming central to military modernization efforts in states far beyond the United States. The appeal is straightforward. Hypersonics threaten to bypass even the best existing defenses, compelling both major and regional powers to invest, innovate, or seek new partnerships to remain relevant or protected. While the US continues to advance its own programs, such as Dark Eagle and NextRS, rivals are fielding their own hypersonic missiles or aggressively pursuing development. Nations are also investing in anti-hypersonic defense, advanced sensor networks, electronic warfare, and cybersecurity in an effort to counter these threats. The cycle is self-reinforcing. The more offensive hypersonic capabilities proliferate, the greater the urgency to develop effective counters or deterrents. Recent US history offers lessons in both potential and risk. Ambitious projects have been delayed, curtailed, or cancelled in response to shifting priorities or budgetary limits. The decision to abandon projects like Super Tomcat 21 envisioned as a leap in carrier-based capabilities, now serves as a reminder of how interruptions in innovation can have long-term strategic consequences. Other efforts like the B-2 proved revolutionary, but were limited in scale by cost and complexity. In today's environment, similar challenges confront NextRS. Delays due to technical and political hurdles, including those related to international sanctions, have already postponed its first flight to at least 2025, with production unlikely to begin immediately thereafter. Allies, rivals, and potential adversaries are watching the fate of the NextRS program closely, as its progress or setbacks will shape global assumptions about deterrence and power projection capabilities for years to come. The overall tempo of the hypersonic race will be set by those who can move their concepts from research to reliable operational deployment quickly and sustainably, changing the face of deterrence and defense policy. The fielding of hypersonic bombers and comparable missiles will do more than add cutting-edge weapons to arsenals. It triggers new debate among policymakers, strategists, and defense leaders. The acceleration of attack timelines challenges established norms for warning, attribution, and crisis management. During the Cold War and since, long-range bombers and missiles allowed for detection and tracking well before impact, providing decision-makers with time to assess threats, consider responses, and avoid accidental escalation. As hypersonic bombers and their payloads compress this decision window, the risk of misunderstandings, miscalculation, or unintended escalation rises accordingly. Existing arms control regimes, designed for intercontinental ballistic missiles and heavy bombers, do not adequately address non-nuclear hypersonic systems. Verification and attribution mechanisms are not easily adaptable to platforms that may carry conventional payloads, but travel on similar trajectories or at similar speeds as strategic nuclear delivery vehicles. This creates new risks and highlights the need for updated frameworks to manage ambiguity and foster mutual predictability. Operationally, the presence of platforms like NextRS will allow planners to contemplate strikes previously considered unfeasible, rapidly disabling moving launchers, hidden command centers, or hardened airfields with minimal notice. This suggests an explicit tilt in the military balance toward rapid, precision offense, potentially changing both US and global force posture calculations. However, such advancements also introduce uncertainty. There is active debate over whether diminishing warning times will make conflict less likely due to advances in deterrence, or more likely by fostering instability and eroding confidence in existing safeguards. Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and other capitals are now compelled to reconsider the thresholds for response, escalation, and control in the presence of hypersonic-enabled warfare. Ultimately, the defining characteristic of this new era is the requirement for military organizations and policymakers to reckon with threats and opportunities unfolding in mere seconds rather than minutes, a major conceptual shift with implications for global security, enduring challenges and the path forward. For all the promise of platforms like NextRS, the magnitude of the challenge involved in turning hypersonic bombers and their associated weapons into fully operational systems cannot be overstated. The pace of technological development is driven by a sense of strategic urgency, but transforming ambitious research into reliable, operational platforms is a task requiring both technical mastery and institutional resilience. Materials engineering is at the heart of the endeavor. Airframes and heat shields must handle temperatures and pressures unknown to most existing aircraft. Crystal-reinforced alloys, ceramics, and specialty composites, evolved from past spaceplane research, are under intensive development. Propulsion technology, critical for sustaining controlled flight across wide regimes of altitude and speed, remains on the edge of feasibility. Cooling, fuel management, and intake design all demand innovation. Operational challenges are just as significant. Hypersonic bombers must integrate tightly with their weapons systems to maximize effectiveness. Procedures for maintenance, deployment, and mission planning must be reformulated from the ground up, and both air and ground crews will require new forms of training and simulation to master complex systems. Complexities extend to the supply chain and international environment. Access to rare earths, advanced processing technologies, and cutting-edge electronics can be affected by global events, alliances, and sanctions. Budgets are subject to shifting political priorities, and the frequent reordering of national strategies must contend with long development timelines and evolving security concerns. Despite these headwinds, the core imperative remains: to sustain and project power in contested environments. Platforms like the NextRS will soon move from notional to necessary. Each postponement in development or deployment risks surrendering the initiative as rivals adapt or exploit new vulnerabilities. Redefining war, recalibrating power. As the United States advances its pursuit of a hypersonic bomber, the potential impact on military balance and doctrine is profound. The NextRS concept is a distilled response to enduring anxieties about losing operational advantage, about adversaries exploiting advances in detection and integrated defense networks. In developing both the bomber and its hypersonic payloads, the US is moving to shape the future strategic environment, one in which time and distance are compressed by new technology. Hypersonic capability collapses the barriers that have historically insulated military and political actors from direct, fast-moving attacks. This forces difficult questions about arms control, escalation, and the evolving nature of deterrence. The first indications of an inbound strike may now coincide with impact, raising the stakes for miscalculation and increasing the value placed on rapid, well-informed decision-making. The shift to hypersonics is not a leap into the unknown, but rather a calculated move to maintain the initiative as old paradigms erode. If the United States fields platforms like NextRS before rivals can close the gap or develop effective defenses, it may help set the terms of future competition. But as the clock counts down to operational deployment, uncertainty remains. Over technological hurdles, political obstacles, and emerging response strategies worldwide, the hypersonic era brings not just faster flight, but a requirement for new doctrine, restraint, and international engagement. For those charged with keeping pace or aiming to counter these new capabilities, there is no simple solution and no going back. The future of conflict may depend on mastering seconds, not minutes, and on anticipating challenges that, until recently, were measured in decades rather than fleeting moments.